You've edited for two of the biggest YouTubers in the entire world.
Are you like the number one?
Yeah, number one and the second. We got Mr. Beast and Logan Paul. And I want to dive right into it though and see kind of the differences between editing for the two of them. Because I was telling Kostas before the show, right? You see Mr. Beast in my brain, I have never worked with either of them, right? But I'm assuming this is the most analytical person of a YouTube video, and anything that he kind of says, I was listening to Dan Mace pod, and he's like, anything Mr. Beast says, you're like not really going to question, because this guy has put in so many years of analyzing a YouTube video that in a traditional sense of him being a filmmaker, he's like, oh, if this creative says something, I'm gonna be like, no, you're wrong. Right. But with working with Mr. Beast, it's different. And I'm assuming working with Logan Paul is also a very different dynamic. So what was it like working for the two of them? And what were kind of some of the key differences that you noticed during your tenure there?
The time that I was with Jimmy, he hired me to be the person to disagree with him.
Oh, wow.
God, that's dope.
Terrifying.
So that was very fun, incredibly stressful, but also very fun. But then also with Logan Paul, I think he was also the person where he was very, the difference is this, Logan was very character and personality orientated, whereas I think Jimmy was very spectacle and just content related. That was what he was excited and focusing on. And so in at that time, he was very focused on the spectacle, just the idea. And he wasn't so much focused on the character. He just wanted to give you something very cool to look at that has this optimized pace. Whereas Logan was the opposite, where it was, let's just, I call this sort of the garden chair theory, which is where Logan and his entourage and his team, they created such a great rapport and were very good at improv and comedy and just coming up with jokes just like that. Logan was able to put him and his team in the middle of a field with a simple garden chair, and they'll be able to get an hour's worth of content just with that garden chair. If Jimmy was in that same circumstance with his team, they would probably find it very struggle, and within maybe about 30 minutes, they would have bought a forklift and crushed it. But I think that was kind of the differences they were making. So it was character focused, and then with Jimmy, it's more so like spectacle and big idea focused.
With Logan Paul's videos as like this spectacle, this character, are you just like looking at the footage in a Dropbox and being like, okay, what's the story here? How can I put it together? Are they just filming kind of like a bunch of random stuff and you're trying to put together the story? Or were you kind of like talking to Logan and saying like, hey, you should maybe film it like this to make sure I'm getting these shots to lean more into the edit?
Or do they like send you an outline or like,
Pre-pro call, what's the vibe?
Well, I think there's two different eras that I would like to describe with Logan Paul. One was the daily vlogging era, this was 2016 up to the start of 2018. And that was essentially, he would film anything and everything that he can, send it to me across the world, because I lived in the UK at the time. I don't know, open up my Dropbox, I have footage ready to go, and then I then get that 2 hours of content or that he films and get it down to like 10, 15 minutes. So yes, there's lots of things being shaved, there's lots of things that are being cut, and then for me, it is bringing it into that focus of what do I think is the best content. Now I will say 2016, 2017 content was a very different time period to what was considered good. You watch those videos now, they are awful. They are fucking garbage. But then
I'm not cutting them anymore.
and then the second sort of vlog era of Logan was what I call the quarantine vlog era. Can you see that I am good at podcasts because I correct myself a lot? What I call the quarantine vlog era, which was again where similar thing. He would give me an hour or two's worth of footage every day, and I would then have to get it down to 5 minutes. And but what it is that, but Logan and his team were very funny. So there is so much things that we're like, this is not really as funny as we want it to be. And we were following sort of the idea of it kind of being in a bit more of like a highlight reel. Like there's this rules of comedy where you got to get into the scene as late as possible, and then you leave as soon as possible. And then what that then meant is, and so we follow that philosophy. And so it would be like, they would start improving a scene and they'll be going for about 10 minutes. I'm like, shit. Oh, that's a funny in. And all that stuff's gone. It doesn't matter. It's gone. If Logan says he wants it back, fuck you, it's gone. And so it was, and then I followed that out. And then as soon as I got like a great punchline, they will probably improv for another 10, maybe even 20 minutes. And I'd be like, nope, this is shit. It's all gone. I always came into the scene as late as possible and left as soon as possible.
You also do something, and you've talked about this, about cutting quick, and then like settling in on that punchline. Can you talk about that editing strategy?
Yeah, I think it's one of my favorite strategies. I think earlier in my life, I was a drummer. And so I originally wanted to be a musician at one point in my life. But it gave me a really great sense of rhythm. And so I think it is, if there is a specific joke or a very specific line that I think is the most important part, I would set up the rules where I would have things be cutting fast. And so maybe cuts go faster and faster and faster, or they have a very clear rhythmic pace. And so each cut I will specifically have be half a second, half a second, half a second, half a second. But then the line that I want everyone to focus on, that's 3 seconds or 5 seconds. And what that then means is that you now notice the difference. Now this is me talking slowly, and now you can feel the difference. Like you're kind of paying a bit more attention. I saw your eyes drift though, so it's not quite working.
I'm just trying to pay attention to this dog. Hopefully it doesn't knock over any of the camera stuff.
It'll be a great outtake though.
Yeah, right.
But I think variety and rhythm is such an important tool for me in storytelling. One of my favorite examples is when Logan was scammed $3.5 million of Pokemon cards. So I set up 3.5 minutes of context of leading towards that moment of when he finds out that he got scammed. And so that entire shot was 1 minute and 45 seconds where I didn't cut for a single moment. But what that then told me is that for me to earn me not needing to cut, I needed the first 3.5 minutes to have a good, fast, aggressive pace. So therefore you then feel that difference. So much so that genuinely right before that 1.5 minute shot, I just again cut 1 second. No, even shorter, half a second, half a second, half a second, break. And then you, in theory, are so engrossed you don't even notice that I haven't cut for 1.5 minutes. And not cutting in 1.5 minutes for a YouTube video, that's unheard of. Like, you shouldn't do that, but that's how you can make that work.
Now talk about how you can incorporate that into, and if you can, into short form content. Because is this an editing trick or tip that you can bring into short form content and kind of just faster pace edits, and then you kind of hang on something even longer?
There's this one line in The Incredibles that I also live by, and it's that thing of like, when everyone's super, no one is. And I kind of follow that same philosophy. When everything is fast, none of it is. And so actually, I would honestly say it could be in your interest to maybe try and break out of that. And so maybe you do start your video fast, like give them the decent, here's what a video is, here's what I'm going to deliver to you, here is the promise. And maybe you then bring into that. And then by that time, I think they're probably a bit more invested into the story. Maybe in the first 10, 20 seconds, maybe you can slow it down a little bit more. The entire thing doesn't have to be at that same pace. It's just these differences in rhythm has to still be ingrained in storytelling context. So the context that you've given is still engaging enough. You can slow it down. And so I think that's really the most important thing, is actually context.